The moment you genuinely see this, your thinking reorganizes itself around a new center of gravity. Problems that consumed you for years suddenly reveal themselves as simple problems of perspective, not circumstances. Fears reveal themselves as mere shadows cast by worldly beliefs you no longer hold. There is a phenomenon in physics called hysteresis, which describes systems that are permanently altered after a certain threshold of force is applied. They cannot return to their original state. Consciousness works this way too. Once your heart crosses this threshold of absolute yaqeen, the narrative of absolute separation can no longer reconstitute itself with the same authority. Your creativity and clarity change categorically because your brain is no longer consuming massive cognitive bandwidth with endless loops of comparison, anxiety, and ego maintenance. Your relationships transform. You no longer enter them out of an unconscious need for validation, allowing clean, honest connection to flourish. Even your body begins to change, releasing the chronic tension, jaw tightness, and physical constriction where unexpressed worldly fear and grief were stored. Most profoundly, your relationship with death completely transforms. Underneath every worldly anxiety and desperate grab for control is the master fear of annihilation, the fear that you will cease to exist. In this elevated state of faith, this fear is dissolved at the root. You directly experience that the awareness of your ruh cannot die. Your physical body will return to the dust, and your worldly personality will fade. But the soul that belongs to Al-Hay, the ever-living, is not a thing trapped in time. It is the space in which time itself appears. When you know this as a felt reality, the fear of death loses its entire foundation. You have always had this connection. True faith was never absent. Your awareness of it was simply obscured by a worldly mind that learned to separate the sacred from the mundane. You are not the fragile tool of your ego. You are the hand that holds it. The moment you release the exhausting performance of being less than what Allah created you to be, everything changes. Stop the seeking, stop the performing, stop the defending, and discover what has been here all along, silent, vast, and utterly unbreakable, waiting with infinite patience for you to return home to your faith. Your frequency of faith is your absolute protection, and it always has been. Now that your heart is beautifully recalibrated under the banner of Tawheed, there is an even deeper layer of divine wisdom waiting for your soul next. Go immediately and watch the quantum field stops resisting you the moment you completely surrender control, because it reveals the exact miracles that manifest when you entirely stop forcing reality through your human ego and let the flawless decree of Allah reorganize your entire physical life on your behalf. That is exactly where this transmission leads your soul tonight. If consciousness is fundamental to the structure of reality, then the state of your heart is not a private, internal affair. It is a participatory act. When your attention is whole, undivided, and cleared of nifaq, internal hypocrisy, through absolute sincerity, ikhlas, reality begins to respond differently to you. Synchronicities multiply, opportunities appear because you are no longer filtering them out through the lens of unworthiness or fear. Relationships shift because you are no longer projecting your defense system onto every interaction. People can finally respond to who you actually are rather than to the armor you were wearing. The shift is simply the end of the belief that you ever lacked wholeness. One view implies that you were broken and now you are fixed. The other implies that you were always whole and you simply stopped arguing with your own fitra. Living from this recognition on an ordinary Tuesday means embodying presence without performance. You feel the frustration of daily life, but none of it owns you. The feelings arise, move through the open space of your awareness and pass because you are no longer building a worldly identity out of them. They are weather, you are the sky, and the sky does not fight the weather. This realization leads to action without anxiety. You are no longer acting from a place of lack, trying to fill the hole that cannot be filled by worldly means. You are acting from an overflow of faith. True compassion arises naturally. It is not absorptive, it is radiant. You do not absorb another person's suffering to the point of exhaustion. Instead, you meet it with a presence so stable and grounded in tawakkul, trust in Allah, that it creates a peaceful space for them. You become a clear channel of peace, not a sponge. You also become profoundly comfortable with not knowing the future. You realize that the desperate need for human certainty was itself a form of fear, an attempt to control an inherently uncontrollable universe. When that need dissolves through surrender, taslim, it is replaced by an open, alive willingness to meet each moment as an act of divine decree. To touch this directly, turn your attention right now to attention itself. Do not try to stop your thoughts. Simply notice the awareness that is aware of the thoughts. Your body has changed, your worldly beliefs have changed, but the pure awareness of your Ruh has never changed. It is the constant space in which your entire life appears. The moment you stabilize in this state, your entire relationship with your own past changes. You realize you were never actually without this divine connection. You were only convinced you were. The separation was always a story reinforced by a heedless society. The shift is entirely subtractive. You do not add a new way of thinking. The old one simply becomes impossible. The practice is not building something, it is clearing something. It is the difference between constructing a window and cleaning one. The light was always there. You are just removing the grime that accumulated over years of worldly neglect. Let me describe what this actually feels like from the inside. Before this shift, your attention feels like a narrow flashlight jumping from worry to worry, like a nervous animal, convinced that only what the narrow beam touches is real. After the shift, attention feels like the room itself being lit from everywhere simultaneously. You are aware of your thoughts without being trapped inside them. You are aware of your emotions without being driven by them. You are aware of the silence between sounds and the stillness between movements, and that space is filled with divine tranquility. Your relationship with time also changes. Before the shift, you are constantly being pulled into the future by anxiety or dragged into the past by regret. Cognitive psychology shows that the average person spends roughly 47% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they are currently doing. Half your life is spent in a past that is gone or a future that has not arrived. After the shift, the tyranny of time dissolves. The compulsive pull toward past and future loses its gravitational force, and the present moment reveals itself as an infinite field of presence before your Lord. You stop rushing because you realize the fulfillment you were chasing was always here, hidden in plain sight. The third thing that changes is your relationship with identity itself. Before the shift, you define yourself entirely by your name, your history, your wounds, and your achievements. You exhaust your energy maintaining and defending this superficial image. After the shift, you still have a personality and a history, but you no longer believe that those worldly layers are what you fundamentally are. They become clothes you are wearing rather than a skin you are trapped in. When you are no longer defending a fragile worldly ego, your entire internal defense system powers down. You stop perceiving threats everywhere because your soul is anchored in Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. You cannot insult the ocean by insulting a wave. This is not numbness or dissociation. It is the most present, emotionally available state a human being can inhabit. Because when you are not busy defending your ego, you can finally feel reality as it actually is. You can let grief move through you without it becoming your identity, and you can let joy arise without clutching at it tightly. This touches the very fabric of how reality organizes itself. Quantum mechanics struggles with the measurement problem, the reality that before a quantum system is observed, it exists in a wave function of infinite possibilities, but the moment it is observed, it snaps into a single, definite state. Consciousness and the quality of attention brought to the field determine what becomes real. Have you spent years trying to protect your peace with external walls, and you still walk out of every room emotionally drained? True protection does not come from external shields. It comes from how stable your heart is on the inside when other people's chaos walks in. Think about what happens to water when you stop disturbing it. You do not have to teach water to be still. Stillness is its default condition. Your consciousness works the same way. The agitation you feel, the anxiety, the overthinking, none of that is your natural state, fitra. All of it is disturbance acting upon your awareness from the outside. You have spent so long in that disturbed state that you mistook the ripples for the water itself. You thought the noise was you. It was never you. True faith is what remains when the noise stops, and it does not feel like becoming something greater. It feels like becoming something honest. It feels more familiar than anything you've ever known, because it is older than your worldly identity. It is the Ruh, the divine spirit breathed into you that was present before your first memory formed, the silent witness that watched your entire life unfold without ever being changed by it. You have always had access to this state. The infrastructure for this state exists in you right now, designed by Al-Khaliq. The science behind this is extraordinary. Neuroscience has begun to map what happens in the brain during states of profound peace and what researchers call non-dual awareness. When someone enters a deep state of stillness, the brain does not light up with new activity. Instead, activity decreases. Specifically, activity in the default mode network, the constellation of brain regions responsible for generating your internal monologue and your sense of a separate, anxious ego, goes completely quiet. The default mode network produces the running narrative of I, me, mine that you experience as your worldly identity. It is the neurological machinery of separation. When that machinery powers down, a profound peace is revealed. Researchers at major universities have documented that when this self-referential noise decreases, what emerges is not emptiness, but fullness, a stillness that was always there, running underneath the narrative like a river beneath a city. This is what is meant when we realize that inner peace is a subtraction of worldly noise, not an addition. There is a moment that changes everything, and it does not arrive the way you were told it would. It does not come with thunder or a blinding flash of light. It comes quietly, like a breath you have been holding for decades, finally releasing without your permission. In that release, something shifts so fundamentally inside you that the person who existed 5 seconds before becomes unrecognizable. Not because you gained something new, but because you stopped pretending you never had it. This is what entering the state of true yaqeen, absolute certainty, means. Once you cross that threshold, you do not think like someone who just discovered a new power. You think like someone who cannot remember what it felt like to be without it. This spiritual transition is so total that it erases the memory of limitation the way waking up erases a dream. Most worldly teachings frame awakening as acquisition, telling you that you must attain higher consciousness or achieve some elevated frequency you do not currently possess. Embedded in that language is a lie that has shaped entire civilizations, the lie that you are starting from zero, the lie that closeness to your Creator is somewhere else, in some other dimension, at the end of some other practice. But what if the opposite is true? What if this state of pure faith is not something you enter like a room you have never been in? What if it is something you stop leaving? What if the effort was never about climbing towards something above you, but about releasing the grip on the worldly illusions, dunya, that pull you below your own natural position?